Hey everybody, this is Morgan J. Ingram here with the SDR Chronicles, bringing another live guest to you guys today, special guest, and we're going to talk about how to avoid burnout in your SDR career. It's something that SDRs are facing and on a continuous basis as this role is tough. So there are tips and tricks on how to avoid that and actually how to excel in your role without burning out and feeling like the world's coming to an end. So I have Ashleigh here. She's going to give a little background on herself. And super excited to have her on the show today. So without any further ado, Ashleigh, introduce yourself to the audience before we dive into the topic of today.
Sounds good. So hi, my name is Ashleigh Early. I am a Senior Sales Development Manager here at Okta. I actually only recently joined the Okta team back in November, but I came up as an SDR through companies like FireEye and Arista Networks and a couple other places. I've been an SDR manager for a couple of years, worked for both FireEye, Pernix Data, and Mattermark. So kind of been around the block a few times, both as an SDR and as a manager. And this is a topic I'm actually really passionate about. It's something I've seen handled well, I've seen handled poorly, and it's something I think is completely avoidable. So I'm really excited to kind of share what limited insight I have and see if we can make some things happen out there.
Awesome. So let's ask you a question. How did you get into sales development?
I stumbled into it as a matter of necessity, actually. My father was in tech sales for ages. He still is. He works for a consulting company up in Seattle, and I was raised by a salesman, and that meant he was gone a lot and he was traveling all the time. And so when I went into college and everything was like, I'm never going to do sales. I want a life. I want to live, the whole thing. And I graduated right at the height of the recession. And like a really good stat, I actually went to Santa Clara University, and my husband graduated 1 year ahead of me. When he graduated, the student newspaper reported 80-something% of graduates graduated with an offer. I graduated 1 year later, and like 20% had jobs. So I was graduating, I had a degree in music and political science. I knew I didn't want to be a lawyer, and there was no chance at a music career, and I panicked. So I ended up getting a job as an ABA therapist. I was actually working in-home with autistic children, which was actually incredibly rewarding. I loved doing the teaching and the interaction. It taught me the importance of note-taking, the importance of using data to drive improvement. And after about a year of that, I was actually burned out. I was just so drained. And I went and I had a great conversation with my father, and I was like, what the heck do I do? The economy is really in trouble, and I need to provide for myself. He said, no, seriously, it's time. You need to start looking at a sales career. And so he hooked me up with one of his friends who was a VP over at Oracle. And I refused to work at Oracle, but he was the one who kind of really explained the SDR role to me. And he was like, look, just do this. You can make some good money. You control your destiny. Just try it. So I ended up applying everywhere, and I landed at a company called Arista Networks. And I instantly fell in love with it. I loved working in tech. I was terrified of it. It was definitely a steep learning curve, but I absolutely loved getting on the phones and talking to people, and the interaction and the energy of it. It just fueled me in a way that I never really felt before, which was really exciting. And I've kind of been hooked ever since.
Awesome. So I know the flow of how you got into the role. So what was the biggest thing that kind of helped you get away from the burnout? When you got into this role, did someone help you organize that schedule to avoid burnout, or did you kind of figure it out on your own?
Sure. So the burnout I got was more from I was being in the wrong job. When I've seen burnout with the SDR specifically, it comes more around when the way that people are being rewarded doesn't match what actually refuels them, is what I've seen. So for example, the couple times as an SDR where I was really struggling, once I was with a company that was struggling, and I could see there wasn't much of a future for me there. And my boss, who was brilliant, couldn't really do anything to affect that. So my long-term vision was gone, and then the day-to-day struggle just kept getting worse. It just feels like it keeps piling on. There was no real end in sight. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. So when that situation arises, it's really important for managers to get really unique to what would have motivated that individual. So for me at that point, like money would have been a big thing for me, even if it's like a $20 gift card to go, get dinner with my husband. That would have been huge. But that's pretty uncommon. More often than not, when an SDR experiences burnout, it's just because they're in their own head. So where I really experienced it was actually pretty late in my SDR career. I felt like I'd been in the role forever. Like, I've been doing this forever. I've been a top performer forever, and just nothing was happening. Everything was stalled. I could hit my number, reasonably comfortable every month, but I wasn't contributing anything. I didn't feel like I was making a big difference. So what really contributed to it at that point wasn't even so much the schedule as it was everything was on autopilot. So I lost kind of the vision, but I also lost the mental stimulation side of it. And that meant that I spent all day just kind of in my own head talking to myself about why I hated this job. So it's kind of an interesting thing. And you mentioned time blocking, time management, and scheduling. That's incredibly important, I think, actually, to prevent this, because what I think I was doing wrong, and one of the things I've really run with since then, is your schedule is important, but it needs to be rotating. It needs to be constantly evolving. So I was in this rut where I was doing the exact same thing literally every day. I had it down to like a 10-minute increments where I took breaks to get my coffee. So, I should have been changing things up where I'm doing, instead of, email, call, meeting, call, I should have been rotating it up. So like I was scheduling meetings at different times. I was doing my call blocks differently. There's a lot you can do to provide that mental stimulation to keep yourself from getting into that burnout mindset.
And then you brought up some really good points, because I kind of want to touch on how crucial was it to actually set that up, right? Like, how did you kind of segment that for your role? And did you find that you always had to A/B test that schedule that best fit with your workflow?
Totally had to A/B test. Actually, I didn't even really realize I was A/B testing until somebody explained it to me later on.
Right.
So it was kind of one of those things I stumbled on. I'm like, oh, that's what I've been doing. Yay, I'm smart. But I'm actually a big fan of Post-it notes. I live with these things around me constantly. I write everything down. I actually have like color-coded Post-its, like orange is a to-do, pink is a meeting reminder, blue is something I need to do for my boss. And they're around me all the time. You want to really set me off, like rearrange my Post-its. It almost gives me an anxiety attack. Letting that A/B test work. So one of the things like we used to do, actually, I'm going to grab a marker here, is doing scripting. So like if I had a new idea how to pitch I was going to introduce the company, I'd have 2 ways. New way, old way. 10 calls. As I'm making calls, if it had a positive outcome, meaning somebody either said something positive or they asked a question, they engaged, I literally would just tally it up. So way 1 worked, way 2 worked, way 1 worked. And at the end of the day, total it up. I talked to 5, 6 people. You might be able to spot a trend as to what's working and what's not. You can do the same thing with your scheduling. You can A/B test everything, which is so cool. So when it comes to that schedule, start off, figure out what works for you. And a lot of the A/B testing too, it's psychological as much as it is the actual results. So for me, I actually do better at not getting coffee right away. I kind of need to bribe myself. And that was one of the biggest things I figured out about my personality was I need to get in and get something done just to start my day off right. And then the coffee is my reward for starting the day and getting things moving. If I was behind in my quota, I literally would not let myself get my cup of coffee until I'd achieved something like 30 dials. I'd gotten a meeting, finished some project, started off a cadence. So those little hacks, I call them brain hacks, to get yourself productive work. So there's the definition of success in terms of both A/B testing, but there's also the definition of success of what actually gets you that fuel and that excitement throughout the day. So kind of looking for those little moments of joy is really important, I think, too.
Those are super crucial. Figure out the things that you're looking for. What else besides organization of schedule have you seen that's helped you avoid burnout?
One of the other big things is kind of really identifying what is the light at the end of the tunnel for each individual. So for myself, that was knowing what that next role looked like, what that next skill development thing that I was working on was. For a lot of people, it's not. It's about what's going to get them home on time, what's going to get them more time with their family, what's going to help their checking account, I've even met a lot of SDRs, they're really motivated by seeing their reps succeed. So for them, it's, okay, well, what's going to make sure my rep hits their quota this quarter, this month, this whatever. So as a manager, it's my job to figure out what's making you excited, what keeps you motivated, and then constantly bring that back to the forefront of your attention. That end goal, that's when you start getting in your own head and getting that burnout going. So Whether that's, I've actually bought SDRs picture frames to put on their desk. So it's like they have that photo of their family or their fiance. Obviously, a lot of SDRs are at the age where a lot of them are getting married. So we'll do stuff around that. Do a lot of stuff around weddings randomly. It's about finding that personal light at the end of the tunnel, I think, and then constantly bringing that back, that reason why you push so hard, because this job can really suck. So, and that's the other side of it too. I think it's just being honest. This is brutal. This is so incredibly brutal to call a million people and send a million emails, and half the time it doesn't work. And your boss is breathing down your neck and they're just being told to figure it out. It's incredibly frustrating and incredibly hard. So having that really clear vision, and that can change on a dime sometimes. What used to work might not always work going forward. It's just so incredibly important. And it's becoming more and more common to find managers who understand that and who are vocal about that. But that's something, even as an SDR, when you're in the worst possible situation, you can do for yourself. Finding those little ways to do those brain hacks, be that self-motivator, constantly having that visual or kinetic or whatever is useful for you reminder of why you put yourself through this every month,
So this is all kind of like going to the next part of the question here is that, like, hey, what are like some things that you've seen that have helped people avoid burnout, such as the pictures, kind of expand on that? And also, what are some causes of burnout do you see from SDRs that are like, oh, I cannot do this because this, or like I burned out because of this?
The biggest one, it's interesting because there's actually, you get something like, I can't do this because of this, or what causes burnout. And I think one of the important things is to really make it clear the distinction between burnout and entitlement. So you will absolutely, especially once you get to SDRs who've been in the role for a year and a half, it's actually pretty common to see SDRs who'll come to you and be like, I can't do this anymore. I've been doing it for a year. I'm done. Okay, well, why are you done? I'm tired of this. Okay, well, why are you tired of it? If they can get specific, like, oh God, it's draining every day. I'm not getting anything out of it. There's no end in sight. That's burnout. If it's, I've done my time, the entitlement side of things, then you got to address and call it, name it what it is. Hey, this sounds more like you want to move on to what's next. And you feel like you're ready and it's your time, not you're actually tired of this job. So let's deal with that let's deal with that first. Can we do something about that? Is there a next step for you here? Is there not? Let's have a conversation around that, not around you can't do this job anymore.
Right.
So that's a really important distinction. A lot of times it's not burnout, it's the entitlement side of it. When it's the actual burnout, it's trying to figure out what the most draining part of the job is. So we talked about making sure there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's also removing some of the sometimes people can get bogged down in busy work. That's actually something I see now that I mentioned it quite a bit. People are just drained, like, oh my gosh, I'm spending all my time researching. I'm not actually talking to anybody. I'm doing nothing but scrubbing Excel lists. I'm sick of looking at ranking or discover.org all day and no one ever answers. Then it's a matter of, okay, so that's what's draining you is the research. So what can we do to offload that research? And as an SDR, that's something you guys can be really vocal about too. This is causing me to question. This is causing me to lose faith. This is draining me in ways that's affecting my job performance. So having those conversations with your managers around, this is my least favorite part of my job. This is the most draining part of my job. Is there anything we can do to possibly offload this a little bit? And there usually is actually quite a bit we can do with a lot of the more kind of manual labor side of the job. We just need to know when it's getting to that point. Historically, I've even jumped on the phone with SDRs who were really in tough spots, and I've even sent them home and worked on patch for them for a day or two. Because you're no good to me if you're just absolutely stressed and you're not thinking clearly. Go take a day, get yourself back to normal. I'll call your patch, see if I can get some stuff working, get some stuff cooking. I'm not quite out of touch yet, so we can keep things warm. And I think those are kind of the two real things you'll see a lot. And you kind of talked about causes of burnout. I think the causes are really different for everybody. And I think it really depends on the situation you're in. Every SDR team is run completely differently. So it really depends on the unique environment you're in and knowing kind of your own self. So one of the things I talk a lot about, especially in interviews, is people always ask me, oh, well, what do you look for in an SDR? And the first word that always comes to my mind, a little hyphen it, I really look for SDRs who are self-aware. They know kind of what works for them, what doesn't work for them. But even if they don't know the specifics, they know when something is wrong. They know when they're not right in their own head, and they're vocal about speaking up about it. If you can speak up about this stuff, you can fix it. It's when you internalize and you stop communicating, that's when it really becomes insidious. So I'm constantly, anytime I hear somebody going quiet on my team, I start pulling out of them, what's going on, what's in your head, what are you thinking about? A lot of times it's nothing, but it's my job to make sure that that's not happening. And I really put it on my team when I'm asking, be honest, tell me what's going on. It's nothing, I don't need to worry, great, I'll back off. But if something's going on, we need to start figuring out what the root cause of it is.
Yeah, awesome. That's a really good perspective. So when you're kind of going through the root causes, is that like a direct conversation you have? Do you try to like loop it into that? You know, if someone is having burnout, what are you trying to figure out on what's the cause of that? Because it could be outside factors.
And you know what? A lot of the times it is. I've had SDRs who are dealing with family issues. A lot of times are people who maybe moved from another state to a new city. Even in the past year or so, I had an SDR who moved literally across the country, and they actually, I didn't realize this, but they were having trouble finding a place to live. Straight up. So they had a place, that place went away. They tried to find a new place, it fell through at the last minute. And I mean, of course you're going to have trouble focusing on your job and feeling like your job matters and dealing with all the stress of it when you literally don't know where you're going to sleep next week. That's exhausting. So one of the things that I do when I suspect somebody might be approaching a point of burnout is that's something we start talking about in our one-on-ones is what are you doing to replenish yourself? What are you doing to take care of yourself? In terms of actually diagnosing it, the biggest thing is just I don't let it get to that point. And I'll say it, I think you look like you're about to start burning out. You look like you're having trouble. What's going on? Can I help? I have a very open door policy with my team. If something's going on, they need to leave the office, go. You know, I've had people, you know, kind of just drop me a quick text and be like, hey, family emergency, I need to leave. Great, get out of here. And I make it a point to work for companies that understand that stuff happens. There are these external causes and you figure it out. And I think that takes a lot of stress off the teams as well. So it's also like when you're going through your interviews and stuff, make sure you're working for a company that shares your values in terms of that work-life balance. Are you working for a company that's going to expect you to work 12 hours a day? Make sure you know what you're signing up for. And then once you're there, hold, you know, the company accountable to what you discussed. And the biggest thing kind of just talking about with SDR is be open with your manager as much as you're comfortable with. You know, don't bare your soul. I don't need to know about Tinder, right, left, whatever, swiping and stuff. But at the same time, if there's something going on, give us a heads up. Even if it's just, hey, some family stuff going on, might you take some time off in the next few weeks? Great. That gives me the ability to back you up if something pops up. And that's what I tell my team all the time. At least give me some sort of warning, a heads up. Worst case, nothing happens. Best case, I can have your back when that happens.
Yeah, and that's a good perspective to have because you want to be able to be relatable to your team so they can help avoid that burnout. So are there activities that you are telling them they should be doing outside of work? And do you also guys have team building, I guess, you know, kind of outside of work activities as well to make sure that, you know, the team is aligned and there is no burnout?
Totally. So I am a big fan of also team leads. So I also don't do this by myself. So I always try to make sure like kind of I'm the manager, I'm the boss, I'm the paychecks. I have to make all the nasty choices and I have to be the big bad wolf a lot. I tell my team, if you're not mad at me at least one day a month, I'm probably doing something wrong. But at the same time, that's what kind of helps you get to your potential.
Correct.
I love team leads because they kind of get to be one of the team, but not of the team. So they're a great perspective as well. And they're the ones who usually tell me, hey, it's time for team building. So that'll be, maybe we go out and grab a bite to eat, grab a drink. Maybe it's, I just take that individual for coffee. But we try and make sure we do things. Every company I've been at, we try and make sure we do something at least quarterly. I tend to focus when it comes to team building more on experiential stuff. So not just, hey, let's go, you know, open up a tab, but let's go do something. So like we did indoor skydiving a few years ago, did a brewery tour recently, stuff like that. That's more kind of an experience thing that we can share and be social together, but not, you know, cheesy, I guess. I tend to avoid the traditional team building, you know, let's go figure out how to fit everyone on a board or build a bridge.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that those aren't that. I think for SDRs, it's more about building that camaraderie and that team exercise, and then that lifts everybody up together. So that's kind of a cool thing. In terms of stuff that I specifically recommend people do, it's actually one of the interview questions. I ask people, how do you recharge? So, and I try to remember that sort of thing. So if I know somebody is really into working out, I'll ask them, hey, when was the last time you really got a good workout in? And more than half the time, like, oh, well, I haven't really done that a lot lately. All right, what can we do to get you back in the gym? You know, stuff like that. I've given people spiffs where it's like, if you go X% over your quota, I will pay for 2 personal training sessions or something like that too. I'm a big reader, so I really encourage reading, whether that's business related stuff or non-business related stuff. You know, it's making sure you have something that's rejuvenating, that's exciting. The last thing you want to hear is somebody's just going home and sitting. Okay, so do you have a good TV show you're watching? Do you have something that you do? I don't really care what, you just need something. That's the biggest kind of thing for me. And I also really encourage my SDRs to get involved in local sales communities. There's tons of associations and meetups and stuff you can do to connect with other people in your industry. Sometimes the best thing to do is just go vent with a bunch of people who are in the same position. I took a ride to work the other day with a guy who was also at quarter end, also at a year end, another company in Soma. And we just spent the whole way in laughing with each other and, you know, kind of commiserating over doing kind of all those things around year end. And it was fantastic. He sent me a LinkedIn connection later that day, making a joke off of that ride earlier in the morning. And now he's a connection I'll know for years. So building out that professional network also really helps things, I think, too. And that's something I really encourage them to do. So for your listeners, make sure you connect with your AAISP chapter. There's one in most cities. They're fantastic. Sales Hacker does a lot of really great stuff. There's tons of stuff online, obviously your own channel. There's tons of great stuff popping up for SDRs. And I'm even encouraging SDRs to build out their own communities. You know, connect with other SDRs in the area, figure it out. I know some people at a couple different companies have formed SDR-based trivia teams that meet up and like with geeks who drink and stuff like that on whatever. It's build your own network on the back end as well. It's kind of the one thing I'll say I actually encourage that's more generic.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And just, I was curious to know, so for yourself, was reading something that helps you avoid burnout because you were always learning?
It totally was. And one of the things actually, and this is kind of counterintuitive, I actually was reading nothing but business stuff. And so for me, it was, I never took a break. And so for me, getting back to what I love, which is I am a massive sci-fi nerd. I absolutely adore anything science fiction, fantasy. So I went back and I started rereading some stuff by Orson Scott Card. I gave myself a challenge to get through like 100 best sci-fi books of the past century. I'm still not even close to done with that. But just getting back to kind of that stuff that really challenged me, made me think, and gave me a perspective on the world was really a big deal for me at that point. At that point in my career, actually, my patch, kind of a funny story, I was an SDR and I was covering New York, New England, and it was actually during Hurricane Sandy. So I always tell people, like, I get burnout, I get things that happen out of your control. There's nothing worse than calling somebody when their house is underwater and saying, hi, can we talk about network security? Like, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So when everything hits the fan, you've got to know how to take care of yourself and your own sanity, because that's the only thing that's going to get you through it.
Awesome. Well, Ashleigh, I appreciate all the insight and the value you've given here thus far. And I got one final question to you that I ask every single guest that comes on the show. What is a one piece of advice that you give to an SDR who's about to come into their new role?
The biggest thing I tell people is ask questions. Ask questions of everybody. Ask why, ask how. Never stop asking questions. One of the biggest things, especially if you're going into tech, because tech is incredibly intimidating, one of the things I tell everyone to do is anytime you don't understand something, write it down. And at the end of the day, either look it up yourself or ask your boss, what does this mean? I don't understand this concept, this word, this term. Making sure you're constantly keeping a list of things you don't understand. You're constantly asking those questions. The moment you stop asking questions, that's when you're going to stop learning, you're going to start getting bored, you're going to start burning out. So that question asking is everything. And the best SDRs are the best at asking questions. So that's absolutely a skill that'll also help you in your sales career, because the best salespeople are the best listeners and the best question askers out there. So.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the answer to the question. I appreciate all the value that you've given today about burnout, because it's one of the biggest things in this role is a lot of people just mentally get burnt out and they don't know the right things to go to or the right things to do. So I think you touched on all the points of how to not avoid burnout so we can stop seeing it. So once again, Ashleigh, thank you so much. As I always say, guys, keep dialing, and I'll see you guys soon.